The Friday crowd at Harper's Oak wasn't looking for life-changing conversations. They were looking for happy hour. A local jazz musician played softly near the front windows while conversations blended into the comforting hum of glasses clinking and quiet laughter. 36-year-old Ethan Brooks almost turned around the moment he stepped inside. He wasn't a bar person anymore. Not since becoming a father. Not since his wife, Laura, had passed away 4 years earlier after a sudden illness, leaving him to raise their 8-year-old daughter, Sophie, alone. His best friend, Marcus, had insisted. One drink, Marcus had begged over the phone. You've spent every Friday fixing bicycles, helping with homework, or folding laundry. You deserve one evening that isn't about responsibilities. Ethan finally gave in. Marcus, however, texted 10 minutes before arriving. Running late. Traffic is insane. Grab us a table. Ethan laughed to himself. Figures. He found the only empty stool near the end of the polished wooden bar. The bartender smiled. What'll it be? Club soda with lime. Designated driver? No, Ethan replied with a grin. Just designated dad. The bartender chuckled. Respect. As Ethan waited, the seat beside him remained empty. Then someone rolled up. Not walked. Rolled. A woman in a sleek powered wheelchair positioned herself smoothly beside him. She wore a camel-colored blazer over a simple cream dress, elegant earrings catching the warm lights overhead. Her posture was confident. Her expression calm. She looked like someone completely comfortable taking up space in a room. Without thinking much, Ethan glanced toward the entrance. Still no Marcus. He sighed dramatically. The woman noticed. Waiting for someone? My friend. She smiled politely. Running late? As always. She nodded knowingly. Some traditions never die. Ethan laughed. Then, in one of those moments where a tired brain says something before checking with common sense, he looked toward her with a playful smile. Well. He gestured lightly between them. I guess you're my blind date. There was a tiny pause. Then. She laughed. Not a forced laugh. Not an offended laugh. A genuine, bright laugh that turned a few nearby heads. I certainly hope not, she replied. Ethan blinked. Oh no. His face immediately reddened. I'm sorry. That sounded. She raised one hand. It sounded like a harmless joke. He exhaled. I wasn't making fun of. I know. You do? She nodded. If you were trying to insult me, you wouldn't look this horrified. That made him laugh. So I'm forgiven? I'll think about it. They smiled. The awkwardness disappeared almost instantly. I'm Ethan. Claire. They shook hands. Marcus still hadn't arrived. For the next 20 minutes, Ethan and Claire talked about everything except wheelchairs. They discussed terrible traffic. Favorite diners. Classic baseball games. Books. Music. Parenting. When Ethan mentioned his daughter, Claire's face softened. How old? 8. That's a wonderful age. And exhausting. I've heard. You have kids? She hesitated. No. A brief silence settled before she changed the subject. Ethan noticed but didn't pry. Instead, he asked what she did for work. Claire smiled mysteriously. I spend most of my time solving problems. What kind? The expensive kind. He laughed. So, accountant? She laughed too. Not exactly. Before he could ask more, Marcus burst through the door. There he is. Marcus walked over, then froze. He looked from Ethan. To Claire. Back to Ethan. Oh. Ethan stood. Marcus, this is Claire. Marcus grinned. I interrupting something? Claire answered first. Only the world's shortest blind date. Marcus laughed. Ethan rolled his eyes. You'll never let that go. Never. Over the next several weeks, Ethan unexpectedly kept running into Claire. Not because either of them planned it. The city wasn't huge. Their paths simply crossed. At a Saturday farmer's market. At a bookstore. Outside Sophie's elementary school during a community fundraiser. Each encounter turned into another conversation. Claire eventually met Sophie. The little girl immediately liked her. Mostly because Claire asked questions adults rarely asked children. What book are you reading? What invention would you build if money didn't matter? If animals could talk, which one would be funniest? Sophie adored those conversations. Driving home one afternoon, she asked Ethan. Dad? Yeah. I think Miss Claire listens better than most grown-ups. Ethan smiled. I think you're right. Several months later Ethan faced a problem he hadn't seen coming. The community center where he worked announced major budget cuts. Half the staff would be laid off. Including him. He spent 3 sleepless nights staring at the ceiling. Bills. Mortgage. Sophie's school. Everything suddenly felt uncertain. He never told Claire. Not because he didn't trust her. Because he hated asking anyone for help. Instead, he quietly began applying everywhere. Construction companies. Maintenance departments. School districts. Warehouses. Anything. Weeks passed. Nothing. Then one afternoon Sophie accidentally let something slip while talking with Claire. Dad says we'll be okay even if we have to move. Claire looked surprised. Move? Sophie immediately realized she'd said too much. That evening Claire called Ethan. You lost your job. He sighed. Sophie? Sophie. I wish she hadn't worried you. I'm not worried. She paused. I'm wondering why you never told me. I didn't want sympathy. What if someone offered respect instead? He didn't answer. Claire continued. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? Where? I'll text you. The address surprised him. Glass Tower. Downtown. Modern architecture. Private security. Corporate headquarters. Ethan checked the message twice. Surely this was wrong. Inside the lobby, the receptionist smiled. Mr. Brooks? Yes. Ms. Bennett is expecting you. Elevator. 22nd floor. Large conference room. Claire rolled in wearing a navy business suit instead of her usual casual clothes. Around the table sat a dozen executives. Everyone stood when she entered. One man spoke first. Good morning, Ms. Bennett. Ethan looked around. Confused. Claire smiled. Ethan. I suppose I should properly introduce myself. She extended her hand toward the room. I'm Claire Bennett. Chief Executive Officer. His eyes widened. CEO? Of Bennett Urban Development. He nearly laughed from disbelief. The Bennett Urban Development? The one with offices in 6 states. The same. You never told me. You never asked. Fair point. She invited him to sit. The executives quietly filed out until only the 2 of them remained. I didn't bring you here for charity, Claire said. I wouldn't accept it. I know. She handed him a folder. Inside was information about a new community outreach initiative. The company planned to renovate neglected neighborhood centers across the region. They needed someone to lead volunteer coordination, youth programming, local partnerships, parent engagement. It sounds amazing. It also sounds exactly like everything you've spent your career doing. Ethan looked up. You remembered. I remember people. She smiled. Especially people who make children feel safe. He slowly closed the folder. Why me? Claire leaned back. Can I tell you something? He nodded. When I was 29, a drunk driver changed my life. She glanced briefly at her wheelchair. I spent nearly 2 years believing my career was over. She smiled softly. Not because I couldn't do the work. Because everyone assumed I couldn't. I wasn't invited into rooms anymore. People spoke to assistants instead of me. They pitied me. They avoided me. They underestimated me. She looked directly at Ethan. You didn't. He frowned. I made a joke. You made a joke. She nodded. And then you treated me like every other stranger. No awkward sympathy. No walking on eggshells. No pretending my wheelchair defined me. She smiled warmly. That was surprisingly rare. Ethan hadn't realized something so ordinary could matter so much. He accepted the position. Not because Claire rescued him. Because she recognized abilities he'd almost forgotten he possessed. Over the next year, Ethan transformed the outreach program into something extraordinary. Local retirees mentored teenagers. High school students repaired playgrounds. Single parents received evening childcare during job training workshops. Neighborhood gardens replaced abandoned lots. The work spread from 1 city to 3. Then 7. Claire visited project sites whenever possible. Never seeking attention. Always listening. Always asking volunteers what they needed instead of telling them what to do. Employees admired her. Communities trusted her. But Ethan eventually learned something else. Claire quietly funded scholarships through anonymous donations. Paid off adaptive equipment for children with disabilities. Helped struggling veterans modify their homes. Rarely attaching her name to any of it. One afternoon Ethan asked why. You could receive so much recognition. She smiled. Recognition expires. Impact doesn't. 2 years later the company hosted its annual community celebration. Hundreds attended. Families. Teachers. Volunteers. Business leaders. City officials. Near the end of the evening, Claire surprised everyone. She stepped to the microphone. I've spent years receiving awards. They're nice. She smiled. But tonight I'd rather recognize someone else. She invited Ethan to the stage. Looking slightly embarrassed, he joined her. She addressed the audience. The first time Ethan met me. He buried his face in one hand. No. The crowd laughed. Claire grinned. He looked at me and said. She pointed playfully. I guess you're my blind date. The room erupted in laughter. Ethan shook his head. I'm never escaping this. No. She smiled. You're not. Then her voice became more thoughtful. Most people assume kindness begins with grand gestures. It usually doesn't. It begins with ordinary conversations. With seeing someone's humanity before noticing everything else. She turned toward Ethan. You reminded me that I was still simply Claire. Not the woman in the wheelchair. Not the CEO. Just another person sharing a conversation. That gift mattered more than you'll ever know. The audience applauded. Some wiped away tears. Sophie, now 10 years old, cheered louder than anyone. After the ceremony, Ethan and Sophie walked Claire to her car. Sophie smiled mischievously. You know. Claire looked over. What? My dad still tells terrible jokes. I've noticed. But, Sophie continued, they usually make people smile. Claire laughed. I've noticed that too. Ethan groaned. I've been outnumbered for years. You have, Sophie agreed. And you're handling it well. Years later, long after new buildings replaced old ones and neighborhoods continued growing stronger, people often asked Ethan what had changed his life. Some assumed it was getting a better job. Others guessed it was meeting a successful CEO. He always gave the same answer. It started the day I stopped worrying about saying the perfect thing and focused instead on treating someone with genuine respect. Because kindness isn't measured by flawless words. Sometimes conversations begin awkwardly. Sometimes first impressions are messy. Sometimes people accidentally say the wrong thing. What matters is what comes next. Choosing humility over pride. Listening instead of assuming. Seeing people beyond titles, appearances, or circumstances. That simple choice transformed not only Ethan's future but the lives of thousands of families who benefited from the work he and Claire built together. And every time Claire introduced Ethan at a public event, she still smiled before saying, "Everyone, meet the man who once mistook me for his blind date." The room always laughed. Ethan always blushed. And together, they reminded people that life's most meaningful connections often begin in the most unexpected ways, when strangers choose kindness over judgment, curiosity over assumptions, and respect over appearances. Because one genuine conversation can become the first chapter of a story that changes far more lives than anyone could have imagined.